Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Maximum Octane. And I'm super excited. And Eric, I say this every time, and I feel like I have to explain why, because it's my show, right? So I get to pick who I want. And I kind of laugh now, and I'm like, if you ever hear me not say super excited, then that means I don't like my guests and don't really want them here. So I know it's repetitive at the beginning of every episode. I'm really excited, but I truly am. And so one day I'll stop explaining it maybe, and they'll just be like, she says that every time, but because I am every time. So joining me today is one of my colleagues and Mr. Eric Twiggs. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you doing, Kim?
I am just wonderful. Thank you for asking. And you have a very, I want to say, diverse professional things going on. You are involved in a lot of things, and I don't know how you keep track of everything. One of these days I need to have you back on for productivity and other things, because you're one of the few people I know that truly maximize like every second I think of every day and to get the results that you want. So Eric, in addition to being a full-time coach and making small business owners' dreams come true and all of the wonderful things that go with that, you are an author and you have a book titled The Discipline of Now. And you very graciously agreed to give away 5 signed copies of your book for anybody that emails me, and all the links and everything will be at the bottom. So I appreciate that very much. You are certified in executive coaching and Profit First and E3, employee engagement, and some other things. You're very involved with your fraternity. You are an athlete. Like, you got a lot going on.
Yeah, I do.
I get tired. I'm tired. And I know I didn't even scratch the surface, but I'm frankly tired just talking about all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a story that really started my focus on time management and productivity. It really, for me, it started when I was in college, right? So it was my senior year at Hampton University, and I'm having this conversation with a good friend of mine. His name is Donnell. And Kim, I have to admit, at the time, he and I were a little different. Like, he was all about his purpose, and I was all about the party. And he'd always give me a hard time. Eric, man, you need to get serious, you need to focus and know what you want to do with your life. And I'm like, man, Donnell, loosen up. We have plenty of time for all of that. Are you coming to the frat party with me or not? And so several weeks go by, I don't talk to him, but then I get a phone call from his mother informing me of the fact that he was killed in a car accident. Yeah, changed everything for me. Sent me a serious message that maybe I don't have as much time as I think to do the things that I need to do. And literally from that moment on, I've been hyper focused on productivity, time management, overcoming procrastination, and really paying attention. And that literally, I mean, I think about that every day. And that was back when I was in college. So that really is part of the reason that you and I are even talking right now.
Wow, that's incredible, because many times we have something that happens in our life that sort of flips us on edge and says, hey, you better pay attention. But then as life goes on and people get busy, you forget. Like, we know many shop owners and business owners that were like, after COVID, we'll never be in that position again with not marketing and not putting money away and not doing whatever. And here we are, some of them doing the same thing. So it's easy to forget those lessons or to kind of push them aside and say, oh, I don't have to worry about that now. One of the other titles that you have is the accountability coach. So imagine this sort of ties in together with what happened with your friend and when you sort of flip things around. How did you become the accountability coach?
Well, I think some of it was, that was the one thing I would hear from members a lot, like, man, you really hold me accountable. I didn't feel like I was doing anything out of the ordinary. We'd have a call and I'd say, okay, what are you going to do between now and next time? And they'd say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then I would send them a little email with a recap. Okay, Kim is going to do X, Y, and Z. Then we'd have the follow-up call and I'd say, hey, Kim, did you do X, Y, and Z? And it's like, wow, you're really holding me accountable. And that's just kind of how the accountability coach was birthed. And the funny thing is I really started calling myself that and putting that out there to the members I work with just to keep me accountable, right? It's hard to say you're the accountability coach if you're not holding people accountable. So it was a reminder to me, and it's a reminder for me to do the things that I say that I'm going to do. Because for me, it's all about, how you say something and maybe it's early in the morning, you're in this great mood, but to me, true discipline is all about doing the things that you said you would do even after the mood has passed. And I think that's what happens with our members a lot, right? They say they're going to do these things. It's COVID, it's this and that, but then the mood passes and they're not as diligent. So that's really what accountability is all about for me.
It's easy to tell people to be accountable and give them direction and all that. And there's all those jokes about when you can't do whatever, then teach that, there's all those kind of funny things about that. But I know it's very important to you to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So what are some of the tips that you have that you hold yourself accountable? How do you do that in your own life?
Well, I think it's consistency. So one of the things that I do consistently is I have a 3x5 card, right? I always have a 3x5 card on me. If you ever see me, and especially if I've got a shirt pocket on, it's always in my shirt pocket. And I try to stick to 5. What are the 5 most critical things that I need to do for that day? And I hold myself accountable. And then I don't care what happens, come hell or high water, those 5 things need to be done. And that's really the biggest thing. And it's like whatever I write down, it's like it nags me. It's like it's calling for me. So it could be, I'm going to update a blog post. I'm going to do this. So it really keeps me on task as far as what it is that I need to do. But that's the biggest thing. I mean, and the other thing is just, having a consistent morning routine, getting to a point where you just do every morning, you do the same things and you keep yourself, whether you're tired or not, whether you feel like it or not.
That's the big one, the whether you feel like it or not. And a lot of people don't have the discipline. So many studies show that it's not the best habit to just fly out of bed and brush your teeth and take a shower, whatever, and then go right to your task for the day, right to work, or if it's housework, or if it's you're an author or a painter, whatever, that you really need some time in the morning to prepare your head, think about what's ahead for the day. What do you want to accomplish? What do you think about those studies?
Yeah, I think there's some serious truth to that. So what most people do is first thing they do is they grab their phone and they'll start checking email or social media. So now you're starting your day off on somebody else's agenda, right? So you get that email, hey, Eric, I need this. And now you're starting your day off thinking, oh man, I got to get this. Where it does help to start with some type of reflection or meditation, right? Even if it's something you're grateful for or prayer or something, just to kind of get yourself into the right mindset. And it just sets the tone for your day when you're starting that way. I know people who they read something positive or they listen to something positive. I also think movement helps too. If it's a walk, exercise, so forth and so on. But yeah, just getting up and just attacking, your agenda items doesn't prove to work over time.
So in addition to some of the things we mentioned you do, I ran out of energy for a minute to talk about them all. You're a father, very busy father and husband, a podcaster, and some other things. So obviously you have a lot to balance. So how did we get from, you had your aha moment with when Darnell's mom called you, and then you are now this very well-rounded person that seems to have magic when it comes to getting everything done and balancing everything and having work-life balance and all of that. How did you get from that to now?
Well, so as I just started to notice that as I started focusing on time, I noticed that, let's say, even whether it's coaching clients or I have a background where I had 17 locations and 500 employees, right? I started noticing that you could have somebody that gets great results and you can have somebody that gets good results. But a lot of times they know many of the same things. There's not a difference in knowledge and know-how. what I found is that the big difference is, again, the person that gets the great results, they can make themselves do things whether they feel like it or not. We see that with members, right? That's the difference between the good and the great. So I started noticing that pattern, and again, paying attention to time. And then when it comes to balance, one of the things, my thing on balance is different from what's out there. I think a lot of people think balance is you have to do everything equally. Like everything has to be divided up in equal amounts of time.
That is not possible.
Right. Where the true balance is just not neglecting the key things, right? You may, like, I spend more time working. I spend the majority of my time doing work. But having said that, I'm not neglecting my family, right? So I have to dedicate time. I have to put, I think whatever's important to you, you put it on your calendar. So I think if something is a priority, you'll find the time. You'll find a way to make it happen. So I think the key is really being clear on what your priorities are, and then finding the time, making so that way you're not neglecting them. So you're not spending 100% of time with your family. Maybe it's only 7%, but you're making them a priority. And so if you have these different, you can get things done if you're clear on what your priorities are and your priorities line up with what you want to accomplish ultimately.
I'm so glad you mentioned that about balance, because there is an unrealistic goal that some people have because whatever talk shows or, whatever, that everything has to be this perfect wheel and exact amount of time. And when you're working on anything, many times you have to put more time into that than something else. And so because you're not going to achieve the greatness, whether it's being a parent, whether it's being a significant other or anything else, if at certain times you're not putting more energy into something until you get it where you want it, and then you can shift a little bit of the focus or put a little more time towards something else. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, of trying to do that. And I think there's a lot of guilt involved. We have a wonderful society that likes to make everybody feel guilty for not being the perfect dad and the perfect mom and the perfect teacher and the perfect this and the perfect that. And everybody's human, that at least that I know. And so that's a really tricky thing. And it's okay to put more time and attention to something that you're trying to get to achieve a result from. And then many times it becomes not autopilot, but it's a lot more manageable, right? So
I'm going to say something else on that too. I think especially if you're talking about the family dynamic and time and being balanced, I think the key thing is communication. So it's having that, like what happens, a lot of people have a dream, right? They have this passion. So they go all in and start working and just expect everybody in the family to understand that, hey, daddy's going to be away for a while doing this or that. But I think you have to communicate to say, hey, look, this is what I'm working on, and it's going to take time, for the next X and X years, maybe I'm going to have to dedicate this time, but the plan is for us to be here. So I think that communication piece can help. And then when you are with and I'm saying this because I haven't always been good at this. And this is actually, it's been a weak point for me because my tendency.
I thought you were saying it's been a week. It's been a week that I've been.
No, so like a weak point for me has been because I can just keep working. That's my natural tendency. I'll just work nonstop. And the family's like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? So I've really had to work to carve out time and put them on the calendar. And that's how I've gotten better with that whole balance piece. But I just wanted to point that out because I think that's critical.
Can you explain a little bit about putting them on the calendar? Because I know people are listening as like, what? So how old's your youngest?
So my youngest is 9 years old.
So if your 9-year-old comes and says, hey, daddy, can you read me a story? You're like, no, you're not on the calendar until Thursday at 3:00. So sometimes we have to really spell things out.
Right.
Can you?
Right. Because that would be bad, Kim, right?
So can you elaborate a little bit about, I put it on the calendar. So we're not, because I'm going to get emails. Yeah, Kim and Eric said, put them on the calendar. It doesn't matter. We don't care. So I just want to be clear.
So my son, like he's into wrestling, right? So I would look and see, okay, when is the WWE? When are they coming to town? Okay, great. Okay, so I put that on the calendar. That's an event that we go to. For my daughter, I put on the calendar Daddy-Daughter Day, right? We go, we get some food. We go to her favorite store. My wife, we do date night. So I want to have that on the calendar. That's what I refer to. So we have specific schedule because I just believe that if something's a priority, you're going to put it on your calendar. If something's important, you're going to put it on your calendar. And I think that's a good thing to do with the people you love as well.
And that all ties back to accountability too, because it
Yes.
holds you accountable when you see it on there and you see it's coming. And I think where we get into trouble is when people don't honor that commitment and they just willy-nilly start blowing it off or be like, oh yeah, we're not doing that this week. And there's not a really good reason why. It's just this got in the way, that got in the way. What advice do you have for our listeners or viewers now that this is on YouTube too, for keeping those commitments? So when you put something on the calendar, whether it's in your personal life, your work life, whatever it is that holds you to it.
Well, you have to treat, even if it's yourself, you have to start with yourself, right? If you have an appointment to do something, you have to treat it just like it's a VIP, right? If it's somebody that's a very important person, if it's somebody that your favorite celebrity, if your favorite celebrity is on the calendar, if it's Oprah Winfrey meeting you on Tuesday at 2:00, are you just going to stand her up? No, you're not. You're going to move heaven and earth to make sure you make that appointment. But I would argue that you're more important than Oprah Winfrey, right? So I think you have to give yourself that same respect. So it starts with you, and then also with your family members, with whoever. You just really have to discipline yourself, and it takes time. It's one of those things that's simple but not easy, right? It's simple to say, yeah, make an appointment with yourself, keep the appointment, but it's not always easy. But you have to get into the habit of doing it, and it can definitely help.
You just mentioned something that I hope everybody heard about. You have to make yourself important and put yourself first. We have a lot of people that we interact with in personal lives, business lives, sometimes ourselves, that feel guilty almost by putting yourself first, because we were taught, a lot of us growing up, that that's selfish. You always worry about others. You always whatever, put others first, and all of the other things out there you learn growing up. And we take care of everybody else and not ourselves. So what advice do you have for people that feel guilty and say, gosh, I got to take care of this. I got to take care of that. I got to take care of these people. I can't think about myself right now. What do you say to them?
Well, it's like the overused analogy about the airplane. You probably heard it, Kim, where they tell you if something happens, then the mask are going to come from the ceiling, the oxygen mask. You have to put your oxygen mask on first, right? That's what they always tell you. Put your own mask on first. That way you can help the person that's next to you. And I think that's how it is. I think self-care is critical, because if you aren't at a certain place, if you aren't at your best, you're not going to be equipped to help your family and help the other people around you. So I think the key is you have to be a little bit selfish with your time and prioritize self-care. I mean, I think that's first and foremost.
So for the people that can kind of get on board with, all right, I understand I have to put my mask on first, or I'm not going to be of any help at all, and they're going to do it out of compliance and not commitment. They're going to understand the theory, but not really believe that they're worth it. And it's hard to knock that humble out of people. It's hard to it. We got it knocked into us so much growing up. It's hard to then flip that around. Don't you think that that's a big challenge we see people face?
Sure, absolutely. But I mean, sort of for me, I can say if I'm just dead tired, like, and this used to be for me, this is how it used to be for me. If I'm just dead tired at the end, I don't have any energy. I'm just spent. I can't support my son. If my son comes to me with something, my daughter, I don't have anything in the tank. But if I really prioritize, if I go to bed at a certain time, I wake up at a certain time, I exercise, I'm taking vitamins, I'm doing this, now I've got energy. So it's really, I think you do the people around you the best. You could benefit them the best by being at your best.
You just say that so simply. Everybody's going to be like, yeah, Eric, but what about if there's laundry to fold? And what about if there's grocery shopping and all the other little things I get through? And that's part of the accountability, right? Is looking at the things and trying to schedule things out, and what is the flow that makes sense and sticking to it. I heard a quote this morning, and for the life of me, the author's name is just going right out of my head right now, but it'll pop in when we're talking about something else because that's how my head works. But he said, when you procrastinate, you're stealing from yourself. You are stealing from yourself every time you procrastinate. And gosh darn it, this morning thought, holy cow, that's one of the most profound things that I ever heard, because how simple is that? When you're putting things off that you have to do, that's got to get done, and you're making all this happen, you're stealing from yourself. You're stealing joy from yourself. You're stealing time from yourself. You're stealing results. Like, that's a pretty dang good thing to say for somebody.
I agree with that. And because it even affects your emotional state. Like if you're procrastinating, that's something that you should be doing and you're not. You start feeling that anxiety, right? So now you're in an anxious place, and so you're not where you would be if you just did it on time. So I think that's 100% accurate. The challenge with procrastination is that it's a silent killer, right? Because it's not like, if you said, okay, I'm supposed to be working on this blog, and you put it off. Let's say I'll get to it later. It's not like the procrastination police come and knock your door down and arrest you, right? there isn't, like, sometimes there isn't an immediate negative consequence. So you think you're getting away with it. And then let's say you do it the last minute. Let's say you write the blog at the last minute, and then everybody says, "Hey, Kim, that was great. No, excellent. Nice job." So now you start telling yourself, "Oh, well, I work better under pressure." Where every study you ever read will tell you that the blog would have been a lot better if you had started earlier, because your ideas would have more time to develop. So that's kind of the whole trick with procrastination. That's why it's a big problem that we need to overcome.
I wish there was a procrastination police. One time, I think I even wrote an article about it at one time, but we went to Super Conference, and I pack an enormous amount. If anybody ever saw what I pack in my suitcases for Super Conference, but we came back and I was just exhausted, because we're exhausted when we come back from there. And I thought, I am not dealing with that suitcase today. And it wasn't things that I typically wear on a daily basis, and just crazy hats and outfits and whatever. So I'm like, I'm just going to worry about that tomorrow. I don't want to deal with it. And then tomorrow came, and I'm like, oh, I don't feel like, and that dang suitcase sat in my spare room, Eric, I'm embarrassed to say, I think for 6 weeks or something before. And every day it just got so more overwhelming. Like every day it was like a snowball effect of, oh my gosh, I got to go and unpack that thing. I got to go and unpack. And it just became, it took on a life of its own. It just took on a life of its own. So it was this huge thing. And then finally I went and did it. It took me 10 minutes. And then I was just furious with myself that I let all this time go by, and all the time me thinking about it and stressing about it, and like, oh my gosh, and the dread and the just ridiculous. Just was ridiculous. So
yeah,
that's one of my aha moments about procrastination, because you make a mountain out of a molehill, and things just get crazy. It's just crazy. How embarrassing. So see, look at, I air all my dirty laundry, literally my dirty laundry from Super Conference in my suitcase. I'm airing on the podcast.
Hey, confession is good for the soul, Kim.
Confession is good.
I'm sure you feel a lot better now that you've gotten that out. See?
I am. It's there. I tell you what. Thank goodness that was many years ago, and I don't do that anymore. I wish I could say I'm 100% procrastination free, but it's Rory Vaden. Is that how you say his name? Rory Vaden that said that. And I'll have to get the exact quote, but I just was like, oh. So I have a lot of quotes stuck on my computer screen, and that baby needs to get slapped up there.
Yeah, he's got some great books on the topic. He's actually, it's funny you mentioned him. He's one of the people I read about on the topic of procrastination. I think he's really got some good content on that.
We actually just had him on our book club, believe it or not. He was in our book club, as you were.
I saw that.
As you were. So wonderful. So what is one thing that our listeners can start doing right now to be more accountable, reduce procrastination, or any of the other wonderful topics that we just solved all of the world's problems in around 30 minutes? Because we are that good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're changing the world here, Kim. But, but no, so the one thing we've mentioned it, but I'm going to add some more detail to it. This idea of making the appointment with yourself. So for me, right, I would say, okay, I'm going to do this thing. We'll go back to the blog. I'm going to write a blog this week. It's going to be great. And then it would be Friday at 5 o'clock. I haven't written anything. Right. So the key is to make the appointment with yourself, but you also have to include where you're going to do it. Right. So you want to have the date, the time, and the place. I'm going to do it Wednesday at 1 o'clock in my office, Wednesday at 1 o'clock at the local Starbucks. When you add where you're going to do it, the studies show that you're 40% more likely to get it done.
Really, by adding a location and not just assuming, right, I'm going to write a blog. And so you typically do that in your office. So, but actually writing that down or typing it in the computer.
Right. 40%. Saying exactly where you're going to do it. Yeah. The chances of you actually following through go up by like 40%.
I have not heard that.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard about the day and the time and the calendar, but not the location.
It just adds an extra layer of accountability. Yeah.
Holy cow. What do you think about accountability partners?
I think it can be very effective. I think you're having someone. So it's funny. That's what ended up. Kim, first off, before I go there, I have a bad confession to make. Right?
Okay. We're telling
You're confessing today. Things. I got to get this out. Okay. So it took me 6 years to write a book about overcoming procrastination.
You started it or what? You started a book?
Yeah, I was literally procrastinating on a procrastination book. All right. Yeah, I had to get that out. I feel much better. Just like you did earlier. You got your thing out. I got my thing out now. Now we can continue with this show. But no, let me tell you what got me off of the procrastination thing. I had an accountability partner. I was a member of something called the National Speakers Association, and we were taking this little course within the association, and I had an accountability partner. Her name was Laura, and nicest person you'll ever meet, right? And so we would meet every Sunday, and so one of the Sundays, I had said I'm going to have the outline for the book finished. I'm just going to have it done. I'm going to have it finished. And so the following week comes up, and she's like, Eric, did you write the outline for the book like you said? No, I didn't, Laura. Oh, God. And it was like the worst feeling ever. And it's like literally from that moment on, you know, we'd have these accountability meetings, and she's written a great book, and I have my book, but that was critical to getting that done. So the takeaway is I'm not immune to procrastination, and I do think having the accountability partner can help.
Fantastic. Thank you for the wonderful advice and stories today. And if you would like to get a free copy of Eric's book that is signed by him, if you're one of the first 5 people that email me, the links will be below. And then after that, I'm sure Eric would be delighted if you're not in the first 5 that you go to. It's still on Amazon, right? It was last time.
It's on Amazon.com. Yep.
So
at this point of now.
If you go to Amazon.com and buy one, that would, I'm sure, delight Eric as well. And thank you for letting us give a few of the books away and all of your other feedback. So all of the links to Eric's things will be down the bottom, and Eric will include your blog, because that was one of the things I didn't mention. He's an international blogger. He's internationally known blogger. So all of that. So I thank you for carving out time and putting me on your calendar today. Appreciate it very much. And for everybody, thank you for staying tuned in today, and stay safe, make good choices, stay inspired, and I will be back next week.